But let's now, as I said, tonight it's Sunday night therapy for all my toffees out there, and I can see how down producer Ross looks in the gallery. He was pumped Wednesday night. I took him out, him and his missus. They came to the Queens of the Stone Age at the O2 Arena, and now look at him. He's down in the dumps, 10 points down. And
no lifting him.
No, there's no lifting him. Hopefully one of his fellow Toffee fans can help us out here. Paul McAllister, the Toffee Blues podcaster, joins us on The Final Word. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, guys. Are you okay?
Well, we're probably better than how you're feeling at the moment, Paul. So let's just try and digest this and talk about how you're feeling first.
Personally, a bit apathetic. You're down, obviously, what's happened, but it leaves you with this sort of bad taste in your mouth, where you feel like kind of why are Everton being made an example of? Why of other clubs who have seemingly done a lot more damage to the football infrastructure got away scot-free with certain, actions that they've taken, decisions they made, whereas it just feels like, everything's collapsed on top of Everton and they're being made an example out of, and it's kind of not fair. And it makes you think, for me personally, how much longer do I really want to be investing my time in a sport that I don't really think is, it just kind of feels like the brick walls are getting put up to stop you from even being able to dream of achieving things.
It's a big statement there in terms of how you're feeling about, the investment of time. Listen, I run a Spurs podcast. I know exactly how much effort and time goes into it. You do it for the love of the football club that you follow as well. And as you say, feels like you're being made a bit of an example here.
Well, I understand kind of why FFP itself as a concept was brought in. No one wants to see what happens to your Berries and your Portsmouths and things like that. But there is a strong sense amongst a lot of clubs, I think, in the Premier League who maybe dream of kind of reaching the upper echelons, the elites, getting into the Champions League, winning trophies. Teams who are not currently doing that, the likes of Everton, the likes of your Newcastles, your Aston Villas. I'm sure there's a few other clubs I could mention as well. Fan bases that dream of this sort of thing, of sort of FFP being put there to kind of lock the door and stop you from achieving those things, which other clubs have managed to do through one way or another. I mean, the top and bottom of it is Everton have been docked 10 points for going over the £105 million loss threshold that you're allowed to accumulate over 3 seasons. Now, Everton, it's been ruled by this commission, whoever they are, that Everton lost 124 million, I think. So they went just under 20 million over the limit they were allowed to lose. But when you look at it in the past, do you know how much Chelsea lost when in Roman Abramovich's first 3 seasons, when they got the likes of Mourinho, when they brought in the likes of your Drogbas, your Ashley Coles, your Carvalhos, all these players that went on and helped them win titles and get in the Champions League? Do you know how much Chelsea lost in those first 3 seasons when they were making that project a reality?
A lot.
They lost over 500 million and nothing happened. And do you know how much Manchester City lost in a single season? I think I'm getting these figures from the Guardian newspaper. Do you know how much Man City lost in the 2010-11 season when Sheikh Mansour first rocked up into town? When they were spending money on Dzeko and other players as well, your Tevez's, you could have Barry's. They lost £197 million in 1 year. So why
But isn't this one of the reasons they brought it in, to stop this kind of, ownership behaviour? That was...
Well, that is the reason on paper, but that goes back to what I said before. There's a big suspicion amongst, fan bases such as Everton and other fan bases as well, teams that aspire to achieve these things like Chelsea's and your Man City's have done, that the door's being locked, that they're just pulling the drawbridge up behind them. But it's not really about protecting clubs, it's about protecting an elite at the top who don't want anyone coming in and crashing the party. So that's the feeling amongst a lot of Evertonians, kind of how dare these clubs like Everton and Newcastle, Aston Villa, how dare they think they can break into this little cartel? We're going to put something in place to stop that from happening. Now, I know that's just an opinion from Everton. I'm sure you're going to get other people who are in favour of FFP, and I'm not going to say it's totally bad. I understand that it has prevented other clubs from going under, but I don't think it's a system that's fit for purpose. And I think when you look at those facts that I've just mentioned, when all these clubs are losing money and they were able to achieve what they want to do, why is it good enough for the likes of City and Chelsea to do and nothing happens to them? Why can't, if there's a rich benefactor willing to do that for a club like Everton or a club like Newcastle or whoever, why shouldn't they be able to do the same thing?
Just making that pause.
Well, I think, the financial... The problem is, once you get a level. So it's 3 years, and you can't go over this figure of 105 million or whatever it was. You're going to get accountants who kind of want to find a way around it. So it doesn't matter who it is. They're all manoeuvring your sponsorship and everything out around and moving the figures on transfers and putting them over 3 years, 4 years, the contracts. This is what the accountants and lawyers do. They move it all around. And it seems to me that Everton in particular fall foul of this, but at least they come and showed the books and said, look, this is what we're doing, and then they've come out of that process with this huge points deduction. And I think that's what's slightly unsavoury for Everton fans. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And there's a suspicion that if this was another club doing the same thing, then they wouldn't be hit with this fine that Everton have been hit with, because there's certain other clubs who, if the Premier League tried to impose this sort of sanction on them, they would just take their ball and say, well, we're going to go and re-explore a Super League. And that's the suspicion. If they tried to do this to, a Chelsea or a City or a United, if they were ever found guilty of anything like this, because they haven't been as of yet.
And Chelsea, I don't think have been charged yet, but Manchester City have been charged. They
have been charged, but you're innocent until proven guilty. But there's a feeling amongst a lot of Everton fans that they're doing this to Everton because what's the feel? It's only little old Everton. What are Everton going to do? Everton aren't going to go off and make their own league with other clubs around Europe, whereas the likes of your Cities, your Chelseas, your Uniteds, your Liverpools, they've already threatened to do it once before. So if City get put in whatever National League, or Chelsea get relegated or docked 30, 50 points, then it would be easier to swallow. But I don't think anyone in their heart of hearts, at least from an Evertonian's perspective, really thinks that's going to happen.
Paul, I can only empathise with you and how you're feeling at the moment. The frustration sounds very real in your voice. Listen, for those that are listening who are Toffee fans, where can we listen to the podcast and keep up to date with all things to do with Everton when this is going on?
We are part of the Toffee Blues social media account. We have a YouTube channel where we make videos every other day where we discuss this sort of things, match previews, transfer rumours, all of that kind of stuff. And at the moment, everyone is very, very fired up. So if you like your angry supporter ranting to a camera, then you probably would do all right listening to some Everton, the Toffee Blues at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Paul McAllister there, Toffee Blues podcast.